Hello, it's so great to see you today, my friend. We're going to be talking about something relating to composition and something that you can do today that will ultimately improve your photos right now. But first, now, creating a gorgeous landscape photo is all about a lot more than just standing in front of a pretty scene and pressing the shutter button, right? Sure, there have been a few times where in my life I've gotten out of the car, stood by the road, and snapped an epic photo. But those occurrences are few and far between. Instead, creating the most compelling landscape photos, guys, takes time, patience, planning, and an eye for composition. And it's that compositional component that I want to focus on in this video. Matter of fact, if you hang around to the end of this video, you'll learn a handful of surefire compositional tips that can elevate your quality of your photos to the next level. So pull up a seat, guys. Let's go. Let's start off with using leading lines. Now, just about every landscape photography tutorial tells you to use leading lines. And there's a good reason for that. It's one of the most powerful compositional tools you can use, guys. Leading lines help draw your eye in the shot from bringing them from the foreground to the midground to the background. And in this shot, you can see the concept at work. The pathway creates a long, winding line for your eye to follow deeper into the shot. In the process of doing so, you're able to inspect the photograph further. Notice details that, guys, you might not have otherwise seen. And it helps you strengthen the subject too, as seen in this photo. Now, the man standing in the middle of the frame is already a strong subject, but the footprints leading up to the foreground to him only serve to anchor him in the spot where the photographer really wanted us to concentrate our attention on. Photos with leading line also have much more depth and dimension because of the connection from the foreground to the background. You can see that at work with this photo. The meandering roadway guides our eyes from the bottom right corner of the frame through the middle into the top left of the frame. In other words, leading lines help improve the visual flow of the shot. Like the long driveway in the previous shot, a leading line takes us on a journey through the photo by following the line. But they can also be used in another way as well. In this photo, the lines created by the fence direct our eyes from the middle of the shot. From there, we're drawn immediately to the setting sun in the distance. So in this case, the lines contain our eye movement more than they lead our eyes through the scene. Either way, leading lines allows you to determine where you want the viewer's eye to go, which helps tell more of a complete story about the landscape in the photo. Next, we want to strive for visual balance. Visual balance refers to the notion that your photo doesn't feel too heavy on the left or on the right. In other words, if you were to draw a line through the middle of your photo, are the elements on the right visually balanced with the items on the left? Striving for visual balance doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do this and create a shot that is basically symmetrical. Instead, you can use all sorts of features to create visual balance. In this example, the person balances out the visual weight of the mountains. Even though the man and the rock he's standing on are much, much smaller in real life than the mountains on the right, but because he's so much closer to the camera, his presence brings out an excellent balance from the left to the right. As another example, notice how the person in this shot is far smaller than the previous one, but because our eyes are drawn to human figures, they hold a lot of visual power. That means even though the canyon occupies so much more real estate in this photo and has a much heftier weight, it still balances out by the much smaller yet eye-catching human figure. So using people is effective in achieving balance, but so is using man-made objects. This photo has a nice balance because of the bridge in the foreground. Our eyes are drawn to it every bit as much as the distant sun-kissed mountains on the left in the background. Something to keep in mind as well, where you place objects in the frame can determine balance too. Smaller eye-catching elements in the foreground can help bring balance to more heavier, imposing objects that are in the background. Next, give your scene some breathing room. You know when you take a portrait and you're told to make sure that you have enough room so you don't cut off the tops of people's head, right? Well, the same principle applies to landscape photography. Now, what you want to do is compose the shot such that the subject has some breathing room around it. You don't want pieces and parts of it cut off. In this example, notice how there's plenty of room above the mountain and plenty of room on the bottom of the shot to prevent the cutting off of the reflection. That's the breathing room that I'm talking about, guys. There's space in the frame for the subject to shine, but not so much space that it becomes dead space and and doesn't hold interest. But this idea of breathing room doesn't only apply to the primary subject. Take a look at this shot. The mountains have enough room, but the trees in the foreground are cut off. Not only does this make it seem like the trees look odd, but it also gives the photo a bit of closed-off feeling, as though the trees are closing in on you. A better option might have been to frame the trees out of the image altogether, or step back and compose the shot with at least the top of the tree showing. In this example, notice how everything has breathing room around it except for one rock in the right corner. That can be a distraction because there's no room between it and the corner of the frame. So as you're composing your shots, make sure that the subject has plenty of breathing room, but also make sure that the supporting elements in the shot do as well. Next, guys, what we want to do is we want to look for patterns. Now remember earlier when I was saying that human figures are eye-catching? Well, so are patterns as well. By incorporating patterns into your shot, you give immediate improved composition by providing a point of interest and giving the eye a place to rest. You can see what I mean in this shot. The repeating pattern of the sand dunes created a beautiful interplay between the light and the shadows that are going through it. They also serve as a place for our eyes to rest. Each crest of the dune and its shadow is a point of interest we can expect. But also notice how the pattern extends deeper into the shot, drawing us in just like a leading line. Cool, right? Patterns can be less obtrusive too. Take a look at this photo for a great example. The pattern of the grasses in the foreground add visual appeal to the image and help draw us in once again. And in the upward direction of the grass, push our eyes upward towards the mountain in the background. Repeating patterns can also be extremely calming and give the shot a feeling of consistency. The trees in this photo do just that. Though each tree is slightly different, they each come to a peak, and all those tiny pinpoint triangles repeating over and over again, cutting through the mist, makes for a really interesting shot, right? Here's a fun one. Surround your subject with light. In addition to using leading lines to direct viewers' eye, you can use contrast to draw their attention. By this, guys, I mean that placing a primary subject in the bright area of the photo will make that subject stronger. As you can see here, the tree in the distance occupies a very, very small amount of frame, but thanks to the brightness of the sky around it, the bright light in front of it, and the leading lines, it's one of the first things that you notice about that photo. All that contrast between the dark tree and the brightness of the sky makes it a much stronger subject than the photo. Here's another example, only this time the subject is a dark human figure surrounded by the bright sky. Using contrast like this doesn't have to be so obvious either. In this example, the moon is undoubtedly where the photographer wants our attention to be, but the bright moon is surrounded by a light colored sky. But if you look just below that, what do you see? The dark trees along the horizon. The combination of those dark trees and the light sky, and again, the leading lines help bring our eyes deeper into the shot to check out that beautiful moon. Okay, wrapping it up. Of course, there are so many more compositional tips that you can use to improve your photos, but the 5 that I've presented here are some of my favorite guys. I challenge you to give each one of these tips a try and see how effective it can be for improving your compositions. Even if you've used some of these before, try it again and see how you can utilize them in a different or more compelling way to create best possible photos. There you go, guys. 5 tips, 5 compositional tips that will surely help your photos out. If you found this video to be helpful, hit the like button down below. If you are currently not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button, and while you're at it, hit the bell to be notified as we come out with new videos. So what are you waiting for? Get out there, have an amazing day, and create your best shot.